The unfinished negotiation, policy, history and homeland vision of the Kuki insurgent groups in India. The Kuki armed groups in India have entered a decisive phase in articulating their latest political demand, one that seeks constitutional recognition, territorial security, and administrative protection for their people. Their leaders repeatedly emphasize that their goal is not secession from the Indian Union, but rather a structured and peaceful settlement within the framework of the Indian Constitution. At the heart of their demand lies the assertion that the Kukis are simply asking for protection and recognition over their own ancestral land, a land whose ownership is historically validated by the chieftainship records, the Manipur Gazette, and the authority of Kuki Inpi, which acts as the traditional guardian of the rights, boundaries, and governance systems that existed long before the arrival of the British or the creation of modern political units. This documentary account begins with these contemporary demands, but slowly journeys back through time, uncovering how this demand evolved, how conflicts shaped it, and why the Kuki people now see a constitutional settlement as indispensable for their future. To understand the present urgency, one must understand the century-long story behind it. At the forefront of the current negotiations is the call for a constitutionally recognized homeland. The armed groups participating in peace talks describe it as a necessary shield against recurring ethnic conflicts and administrative neglect that have repeatedly endangered the survival of Kuki communities. The demand is not framed as a new invention, but as the modern expression of the homeland vision articulated in the 1960s, a vision that sought a Kuki state or an autonomous political apparatus that respected their unique history, land rights, and cultural systems. In recent discussions, the groups have stressed that unless these historic rights are secured within the Constitution, instability will continue. Their demand is therefore deeply tied to survival, identity, and justice. To grasp where this vision comes from, it is necessary to go back to a time when the Kukis lived across a contiguous expanse of hills and valleys spanning today's northeast India, northwestern Myanmar, and portions of Bangladesh. These regions were not divided by nation-states, but organized according to hereditary chieftainship. Each village was a small but complete unit of governance, culture, and land management. The authority of the chief was not arbitrary, it was grounded in customary law. These traditional land boundaries existed long before colonial borders, and it was the chiefs who maintained records, genealogies, and territorial maps. Even in the absence of modern paperwork, these systems were recognized, respected, and stable in their own indigenous way. When the British entered these territories, they disrupted these natural political units without fully understanding them. British administrators attempted to impose external boundaries, census categories, administrative divisions, and new systems of taxation, often without consulting the traditional authorities. The result was a gradual but deep dislocation. Communities that previously lived under a shared cultural and territorial system suddenly found themselves divided between newly drawn districts, provinces, or international borders. The colonial presence also intensified conflicts by interfering in intertribal relations that had previously been resolved through customary diplomacy. The Kukis resisted these disruptions more than once, and some of their leaders became historical symbols of defiance against intrusive authority. Yet, with time, the overwhelming administrative power of the British and the geopolitical shifts of the early 20th century reduced Kuki chieftainship authority and eroded traditional territorial protections. By the time India gained independence, the indigenous structures had already been weakened, and the Kukis were left in a political landscape that did not fully reflect their historical continuity. As India reorganized its northeastern regions, many ethnic groups secured distinct administrative identities. Mizoram, deeply connected to Kuki Chin heritage, became a full state. The Kukis in Myanmar saw the creation of Chin state. Even the Chittagong hill tracts in Bangladesh received demarcated recognition for indigenous groups including Kuki Chin communities. For the Kukis of India, however, the process did not lead to a dedicated administrative unit. Instead, they were placed under political structures that often failed to protect their rights or recognize their ancestral systems. This gap in recognition forms the backdrop against which the Kuki political movements emerged. The Homeland demand of the 1960s was a direct response to the political neglect, demographic marginalization, and repeated interethnic clashes that the Kukis faced. Early political leaders believed that unless the Kukis secured a constitutional platform of their own, they would gradually lose land, identity, and political presence. Their predictions later proved correct as several waves of conflict eroded Kuki settlements and displaced thousands of families. During the late 20th century, a new generation of movements arose, including armed groups that sought to ensure that the political rights of the Kuki people would no longer be ignored. These groups were shaped by the trauma of repeated violence, the absence of direct political channels, and increasing land pressures. Yet, unlike several other groups in the region whose ideologies took a separatist form, the Kuki armed organizations insisted that they were fighting for recognition within India, not outside it. Their core policy was one of constitutional settlement, not secession. This foundational idea continues today and forms a pillar of their current negotiations. Their demands revolve around four structured points. First is the constitutional recognition of Kuki ancestral land rights, validated by chieftainship records that long predate British administration. Second is the creation of a protected administrative unit, referred to historically as the Kuki state or homeland, that would safeguard their political and cultural survival. Third is the preservation of identity, language, and traditional governance under Kuki Inpi, which continues to serve as the custodian of their socio-political rights. Fourth is the call for peaceful dialogue and legal settlement under the framework of the Indian Union. Understanding the demographic scale of the Kuki people further illuminates the basis of these demands. Today their global population is believed to exceed 5.5 million or 55 lakhs. This includes those living in India, Myanmar, and Bangladesh, as well as large diaspora communities in Israel, where tens of thousands from the Kukichin clan family have settled, and in Western countries such as the United States and the United Kingdom, where their population is estimated between 25,000 and 40,000. This dispersal is partly due to economic migration, but also deeply connected to generations of conflict and displacement. Compounding this dispersal is the effect of historical assimilation. Over the years, especially during colonial and post-colonial upheavals, thousands of Kukis merged into other identities. Some adopted non-Kuki surnames, while others integrated into neighboring tribes. There are documented cases in which Kuki clans became absorbed into Naga identities through administrative reclassification or through inter-community integration. Others assimilated into majority populations in various countries, gradually losing direct links to their ancestral identity while maintaining cultural memories. The Kuki armed groups frequently highlight this demographic history to emphasize that their demand is driven by the need to preserve what remains of their territory and identity. They argue that their people have already suffered enough fragmentation and that the failure to secure a homeland within India will accelerate further assimilation and dispersal. This, they believe, would not only erase their political presence, but also weaken the cultural unity that has sustained them across centuries. As peace talks progressed over the years, many Kuki armed organizations entered ceasefire arrangements and joined negotiation tables with the government of India. The suspension of operations agreements, though imperfect, marked an important shift from conflict to dialogue. These groups consistently reiterated their commitment to constitutional solutions, a stance that differentiated them from movements whose goals lay outside the Indian constitutional framework. However, progress has often been slow. Political calculations, competing ethnic claims, mistrust, and administrative delays have repeatedly impeded breakthroughs. Recent ethnic violence, especially in parts of Manipur, reignited the urgency of the Kuki demand. Communities experienced displacement, loss of land, and deep insecurity. In this context, Kuki organizations argue that an administrative restructure is not merely a political aspiration, but a humanitarian necessity. They maintain that without political separation from hostile structures and without constitutional protections, their survival remains uncertain. According to Kuki leaders, the events of recent years have exposed the vulnerability of their people in the absence of a defined homeland. From a documentary standpoint, what makes the Kuki struggle distinct is not only its deep historical roots, but also its consistent ideological position. Across decades, despite changes in leadership, organizations, and political circumstances, the central tenet has remained the same: a solution within the Indian constitution that respects their history, cultural systems, and ancestral land rights. This consistency strengthens their claim and underscores their commitment to peaceful settlement. Their contemporary policy is built on a foundation of historical evidence. Chieftainship records maintained through generations serve as proof of ancestral domain. The Manipur Gazette includes references to traditional land ownership and territorial claims predating colonial administration. Kuki Inpi continues to maintain the collective memory and customary law that guided their society long before modern states were formed. These sources collectively demonstrate that the Kuki homeland demand is not a modern political invention, but rather a continuation of pre-colonial structures seeking constitutional recognition. The story of the Kuki movement is therefore a story of persistence. It spans from village chieftainship to colonial disruption, from post-independence neglect to political mobilization, from armed struggle to constitutional negotiation. It is a story carried forward by generations who believed that their identity and land deserved protection and dignity. Today, the movement stands at a crossroads where its future depends on dialogue, recognition, and the willingness of all sides to confront historical truths. This documentary narrative brings into focus not only the political demand, but also the cultural survival of an entire people. The Kuki people, spread across 3 nations yet bound by language, lineage, and tradition, seek not separation from India, but affirmation within it. Their unfinished negotiation continues to be one of the longest unresolved indigenous questions of the northeastern frontier. Disclaimer: this documentary-style report is created solely for educational and informational purposes. It does not promote or endorse any armed group or political ideology. All information is presented from a documentary reporting perspective and should be independently verified. Any resemblance to actual video or documentary production is thematic only. Subscribe to Zalengam Media for more reporting, narratives, and updates.